All right. So let's talk about why America is not ready for EVs yet. We have a lot to cover. So to set the stage, I want to go through just sort of a few of the topics we have. So we're looking at EV sales in 3 global markets. Those are going to be United States or North America, Europe as a whole, and then China. Those are 3 really target markets that I think are going to show a lot of different items that we have.
Because each market is drastically different
Drastically
in their
different.
EV adoption curve.
Yeah, and also drastically different in some are like multiple countries, and there's just a bunch of different factors.
Yeah,
that
Europe
we can
isn't
cover.
really one market, it's just a region.
Exactly. But like usually you could group it into that like whole EU bucket. So we could like mostly focus on like the European Union countries because a lot of them have very similar like rules. I mean, you could go between them without going through passport
Actually,
control.
isn't Norway not in the EU, right? That's the one that's not in the EU.
There's a few that I think dropped out. Like, don't quote me on this because it's probably wrong. I feel like even like London or the UK might have left, not London, the UK.
Brexit, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like complications with that.
And then there's NATO, which is different.
Exactly, yeah. This is going to be a future topic, for sure.
Next time.
For sure. But so either way, let's go through these and see sort of what we have. So I'm going to start with the 3 global markets, and I want to draw everyone's attention to the market capture. So there's a lot of different, these are all going to be estimates, right? I know people are going to start fact checking me immediately, which is totally fine. But some of these they're from different publications, and they're also looking at different types of projections. Gotcha. Some are looking at 24, some are looking at future projections in 25, but it's still a good estimate of where we stand. So if you look at these charts, we have the United States EV sales. It's pretty weak.
13%.
13%. So despite all these very compelling offerings, we still have a very, very small sliver of the market captured.
I think I know why, but I think we can get to that next.
We're definitely going to get to that. And then if we go to China, overwhelmingly different, with EVs actually slightly edging out gas. Many reasons for that, which we're also going to get to. And then we go to Europe, which has a really nice slice. Like Europe as a whole, if you could put it in a bucket, approximately 24-25% of new car sales are EVs, right, which is getting to a much more sustainable area and one where people and car developers alike or car manufacturers alike are going to want to start like investing more in that market because you've captivated enough.
And governments too invest.
And governments, exactly.
The infrastructure, that's a big part of it.
Because it's scary for the government, for people, for manufacturers when they're putting all this money into R&D and at most like 1 out of every 10 cars sold are going to be EVs. 1 out of 4 and 1 out of 10, that's a very big difference. Or 1 to 1, right, if you're in China.
Yeah, I mean, the government incentives and the investing really plays a big role in that. And China, the big reason why they're ahead right now, as you know, is because of their huge government direction to want to dominate the EV space.
Exactly. So that's a really big item. And the one thing that blows me away about the United States, and I think the first topic, the pillar of this I want to cover is transportation dependency. The United States, as you know, since we live here, we are car dependent or electric vehicle dependent, right? But in other countries, especially China, which is a big anomaly, they are starting to really invest in public transportation infrastructures, all green. They went from like nothing years ago to like the most complicated high-speed rail system in the world, which is unbleable.
Yeah, infrastructure spending for China is a big reason why their GDP growth has been so insane.
Exactly. Because in a lot of it, again, it all always boils down to legislation, right? In the United States, I always go back to the high-speed rail proposition between San Francisco and Los Angeles. That would be an unbelievable project. It would remove so many flights.
I think it does exist, but
yeah, they're like slowly building it. But the problem in the United States, and again, like this is one of those things where it's like, you know, you're balancing our freedom versus like a powerful government, right?
And that's the thing. That's why China taking the lead here, because their government has the ability to wave a wand and say, now we're doing this.
This is happening. I don't care how many lives are destroyed by this. Because in the United States, like I've looked pretty deep into this, you're operating at the federal level, at the state level, at the county level, and at the town level. And all of those have to all agree. Yeah. And if one town, a single town with like a small population between LA and San Francisco says no, that is years of litigation just to try and work with that one town. So it's like, it's great that we have this freedom.
Yeah, private property rights.
Yeah, private property rights. But at the same time, when we're looking at infrastructure, our infrastructure is fixed. By all intents and purposes, the chance of like a intricate high-speed rail network is like basically null.
Unless we take some of the highways, take away the lanes, and repurpose it.
Exactly. But again, there's other issues, right? Because our highways are very curvy. A high-speed rail going 200 miles an hour can't just like, you know what I mean? Like
hard left turn.
Yeah. The only thing I see, which is like to bring this in like Elon Musk perspective, is tunneling. If we have like intense underground tunneling, but that's like, there's so much.
It's so impractical unless you think about the legislation side of it.
Exactly. Because that's the one thing that you can fix. I'm sure people will find ways to get in the way of that as well in this country. But like, theoretically, if you're underground far enough, you're not imposing on anyone's land per se. There's going to be a lot of things like vibration and like, oh, are you like hitting major like aquifers and all that.
Talk about litigation.
Yeah, there's always so many problems. But like, that's the only path I could see. But to reel us back in here, right? What's been so confusing to me in the United States is, since we are so car dependent, and there are now unbelievable EV offerings. Like 5 years ago, it was a little questionable, but like the cars today are good, right?
With an asterisk.
With an asterisk, yeah. But I think the big thing is, like we've always said, the price. It's all in that premium market.
That's what I mean by that. So in the United States, Tesla owns the EV market.
They do, yeah.
Even globally, BYD is right on the heels of Tesla in China.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the market share of BYD in other markets. In America, it's
none.
Practically banned.
It's banned.
In Europe, though.
Yeah, to quickly touch on that, in Europe, it's spreading for sure. And also, in developing countries, it is explosive. For example, at the end of last year, I was in Thailand, and every single taxi I was in was BYD, electric car. All of them.
Because the average price.
The price is a lot lower. They're making it very easy to get them. I think a lot of them are like well under 20,000 USD if you scale it to. Well under, yeah. Like you can get some that are extremely reasonable. And in these developing countries, it's like, and I gotta say, like you could see where some corners are cut, but they're pretty nice, right?
Well,
like,
Chinese manufacturing, it has a reputation of being cheap, and it is. Yeah. But some industries where the government has been investing,
where they're putting money in,
they do make decent products now.
And it's less that the product itself is crappy. It's just like, since it's so cheap, they have to cut corners, because like you're not going to get a like high-end luxury car feel in a $15,000 car. But with that said, when I was in those cars, like, and I've been in the passenger seat of a lot of like Tesla Model 3s in the United States, because a lot of our Ubers are like that. The fit and finish was pretty similar. Like the ride quality felt similar. The materials were pretty good. It's all like faux leather, because that's what the industry is moving towards. That's not even just like a cheap car.
They're trying to hit a price point, but they're doing it well.
They're doing it pretty well. And the tech in the front was like impressive. And like I was talking to a lot of the drivers who were using them who spoke good enough English, and like they were all floored by this stuff, right? Because like they can't quite get to the test level, but like they have massive, beautiful screens. All of the software seemed pretty good. All of them were, of course, like
good stuff.
Apple CarPlay, Android Auto integrated. But when I look at like American cars and the software they've integrated, it's very impressive.
Yeah, but I mean, GM, Ford, I mean, we don't have amazing cars.
Exactly.
Let's be real here. And now, see, BYD, this model here, I think it's called the Seagull. We can put up in post
Absolutely.
here. It's a little economical EV. And I think the global price, or in China, translated to USD, it's just $11,500.
Yeah.
So, and it's, like I said, it's a decent car.
Yeah, it's
it doesn't have like a leather interior, but like it works.
But it works, and I think the main thing, if we want to pull into American legislation for a second, there's a very specific reason why the United States, and a lot of Europe for that matter, can't afford to have these cars in the market. And it's very simple. It's that these cars, because of the amount of money that China's pouring into this, they are too competitive.
That's why we have tariffs now.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you have tariffs. They are so cheap. If this like Seagull, right, is only $11,000 and buying an equivalent Tesla is $40,000, unless you're just like, I'm only buying American, which a lot of people are quickly gonna say no to that after you can save 30 grand, right? And like I'm sure this is after incentives and stuff like that, but like our incentives are getting a little foggy. I want to talk about that more specifically later in the video, but I was looking into our government incentives here. It's like 7,500.
Yeah.
It's like two very specific models. It's not like a blanket system, very complicated.
In all fairness, they have been focusing more on the production side.
Yes.
So as we were mentioning this whole time about China, they're in the position they are today because 10 years ago, the government made huge investments in batteries, EV production. And under Biden, whether you hate or love the guy, he's been pushing industrial policy, manufacturing in America. And a big part of that, like the CHIPS Act, is producing semiconductor chips in America. There's a big, you can see news articles of TSMC getting like $11 billion from the government to build a plant in Arizona. So that's just an example of this. And with the IRA, they have a similar thing with battery production in America. Now it's going to take, just like with China, maybe 10 years for these effects to show through. But that's how on the back end you start to make an industry in America. And while you're fostering that by the investments, you also have the tariffs to protect it from the outside world. And then eventually it can stand on its own two legs. You can remove the tariffs, and that's how you can build a successful industry here in America. But that's a lot of government intervention. For a long time, we were like unsure about that. But it seems like we're kind of moving in that direction.
Yeah. And I think it's a long process, and the American consumer is very impatient, right?
Oh, yeah.
And as we know, like, we want everything when we want it now, and we want it to be working incredibly well.
And right now, all we have is Tesla, and the average Tesla is like $55,000.
55, and like, again, they always say like, and they have a funny way of like pretending it costs 40.
Oh.
Because if you go, they're like, oh, your estimated gas savings and if you get the government incentive, it's like 40,000, but it's really not. And that estimated savings is a very tough mark for me personally, because everyone's driving habits are different, right? Like, sure, if you drive like 50,000 miles a year, you're going to save a lot on your gas versus electric.
I have this infographic here. I can share it with you in post. And it shows that, at least right now, the cost of buying a gas and electric car, and it shows that initially electric is way more expensive. The average price here says $45,000 versus $24,000 of a gas car.
Exactly.
But then it shows the per mile cost, and there is a significant savings with EVs.
Yeah.
But to really make these competitive, that starting price point has to be more in line.
Yes,
and that's just what we don't have right now until these investments eventually trickle through. We have a domestic production and just more options too.
Yeah, it takes a long time. And that's why I think when we're looking at that 2030 range in like 5 or so years now, that's when I really do think that America's finally going to start catching up. That's like, it's like the unicorn date. It's when a lot of our manufacturing is going to really come up.
It will happen.
The price of lithium-ion batteries likely going to really drop.
It continues to fall super fast.
Because that's the key. Like, think of the lithium-ion battery. That's the gold in the car, right? As soon as that price comes down, that's when EVs are going to be a lot more
competitive. It's been coming down. We can put up this chart here from Goldman Sachs. It shows the cost per kilowatt hour has been falling dramatically. And it's projected to continue to fall through the 2030s. So when you combine that with the added production here in America, there's also a big, because another piece of dig people put at EVs is that the mining of these materials is very detrimental to the environment.
Exactly.
But part of this investment in America is because, yes, we have stricter environmental laws here, which is why initially production went in the 90s to China and these other places with looser regulations. But by investing in America and doing it here, we can produce these minerals in a cleaner way by following these regulations. So it makes sense, and that's how the market is going to be evolving in the future.
Yeah, and because you also have, like, if we take in that direction, like the cobalt mining and all of that, right? Like, that's tech, period. That's not just EVs, but like that's like one of the major atrocities we have globally today.
But if we're going to do it, we might as well do it here.
If we're going to let's do it here, because it's, again, like, we know
workers have rights.
Yeah, we know workers have rights. We know there are checks and balances here. Like, that's why it's important to move it here. And I think part of that too, that's what's causing these high prices. That initial move to America, that is not cheap. That is really not cheap. But once we can finally start scaling that up, again, economy of scale, everything happens over time. And I think it's not only gonna make the price a lot less, It's going to make the offerings a lot more diverse. Because again, we're still locked in that like hyper premium
Because
segment.
whenever something is new, you usually begin with the high-end premium
Exactly,
stuff. And then the prices, like cell phones.
Yeah.
Think about the first cell phone.
Yeah.
And then with more competition, it slowly comes down over time. And to your point on how expensive this initial investment is going to be, that's why the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which isn't about inflation, it's about mostly environmental investments in America. They have, at this point, $92 billion just for battery-related production in America. So it's going to take time for this to show through, but it is starting. And you combine that with the tariffs to keep BYD away as we try to make more competitive industries here.
Exactly.
I think the future is bright, even though right now it's not in a fantastic spot.
It is. And to quickly touch on your point from before, you say like things start expensive, like really quick side tangent, like the Apple Vision Pro, right? $3,500 to start. It's gonna be hard to captivate people with that, but once it starts being like 1,000, maybe a little less, that's when the market comes in again. It's in an infant stage. That technology is brand new. Give it 10 years and we're gonna be in a different spot.
On the adoption curve, early adopters, even with EVs, I think we're in the early adopters phase.
We are, and like because it was, I think the new phase I say started around like 2012 when Tesla really started putting out like the Model S and the Model X. Like these they're still expensive, but they're more mass produced. Like the original Tesla Roadster was like a test car, right?
Yeah.
But we're also slowly getting to a new era now where other cars are getting more affordable. One automaker I want to focus on a lot in this is Volvo, because they've been doing a lot. And there's an interesting tie to the Chinese sphere of things.
Volvo is a Swedish company.
It's a Swedish company, but in I think 2015, I would have to check the date, Geely purchased Volvo. Geely is a Chinese company. So the way that works is in the agreement, the Swedish founders of Volvo said this. They said, we will take you on as investor because you have a lot of money, but all design choices, all production must remain Swedish. It must remain in Sweden, all of that part. And what's going to happen is with our oversight, we will manufacture in China. So there are 3 plants with Volvo right now. The cheaper EX30, which is launching in America this year, towards the end of the year, is being developed all in China. They're able to use a lot of those beautiful Chinese incentives when creating them, but since it's a Swedish company, the America and like Europe can't nix it, right?
So makes sense then.
So that car is using those beautiful discounts that they have there, and it's going to be shipped to the Western world. And because of that, they start at around 30,000. And that's before incentive. So, and they're still a pretty high-end luxury car. They're still really nice. They have a lot of power. But like that's a very niche thing where we're slowly finding ways to like not like circumvent the tariffs, but make it so that we're still allowing European American cars to thrive, but bring the price down.
Make
for the
most
consumer.
out of the current situation. It seems like a holdover solution. Ideally, have domestic companies.
It is.
But
it is.
It's something.
But it's something that I see like that going in a very good direction. And the good thing is their more premium model, which is the EX90, which is also coming out that year, that is built in America, start to finish. So all of the manufacturing, they definitely they take goods from around the world to create it, but from like a start assembly line to the end, it's all built here.
It meets the definition to avoid the tariffs.
Exactly. And again, but the reason they're able to do that is because that is a much more premium car. That one starts at like 90,000. So that's 3x the price. And again, we're
part of the problem.
We're still falling into that same thing. It's so easy to build $100,000 cars here, but how much of the American public can afford that? That's the crux of the problem.
I mean, if you're gonna sell a $100,000 car, you do it in America.
You do.
But in terms of like mass adoption, I mean, the thing that annoys me the most are those $100,000 massive electric pickup trucks.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an oxymoron.
It is.
EVs are supposed to be more attainable, lower maintenance. As we touched on, the cost per mile is a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
That's why BYD has those, $11,000 little economical EVs. And it makes so much sense, and they sell so many of them in China. But here, we have an electric Hummer.
Yeah, we have an electric DeLorean Cybertruck thing, right? Like, and it's all of these. They're massive, right? These cars weigh like nearly 3 to 4
That's the other
tons.
issue. The bigger you make the car, the bigger battery you need, which adds more weight, which reduces range, which requires more battery. And it becomes a negative feedback loop. And then we talk about the minerals being so environmentally detrimental. And these huge battery packs with one vehicle
It's like the American mentality. It's like, why do we need the Hummer back? Like, why do we
But
need
again,
that?
it's because you can't quite do a $20,000 EV yet in America.
Exactly.
And we don't want to import it from BYD because then it's never going to happen in America.
Yeah.
So it's that balancing act. And I think in 10 years' time, due to the investments,
I
the
think
tariffs,
so.
we will eventually get there. But right now, we just have $100,000
And I think a lot of it's like a play to the American ego. Like, we like things bigger, better, faster, and like, I guess there's enough of a market. Like, it blows me away the amount of people in this country that can comfortably afford a Rivian R1T, right? The truck, right? Those are expensive. They're not like, it's much more than like an F-150 or the other flagships, right? We have the F-150 Lightning, but that's a different subsection, right? But I think Rivian is one of the top EV companies in America by sales. Like, it's not close to like the Tesla Model 3 volume, right? Like, it's a very different range there, but their overall like sales, because the price is so high, is like pretty good. And if you go in like major metropolitans, I've been seeing a lot of Rivians here. When I was in the Bay Area in California, they are everywhere. It's like every other car is a Rivian R1S or an R1T. Unbelievable.
I mean, America's a rich place, so that's why, again, if you're going to sell an expensive car, you can get a foot. And the margin on those vehicles is way higher than the cheaper ones. So it could help fund the creation of cheaper EVs down the road. And
I'm just like very excited for when we get that first like truly affordable EV, because the EX30 from Volvo is getting there around 35,000 for a luxury
still needs
car.
to be cheaper though.
Still needs to be a little bit cheaper.
It needs to be like a 25.
That's getting there. I mean, in the used market, you'll easily be able to buy it, but that's different. Like you could always say like
you still have to wait like 5 years anyway.
It's like I could buy like a 30-year-old Lamborghini in the used market, but it's not like telling me what it costs today, right?
Exactly.
I think we'll get there. It's just it's a time thing. So I think the one of the other main topics I want to quickly pivot to is automakers backtracking on their EV plans. That's been a very, very big thing.
I've seen lots of headlines saying that like EV sales are crashing and go back to gas.
Yeah, because again, to focus one last time on Volvo. Volvo was one of the earliest companies to say 2030 hard cutoff. There will not be another gas combustion engine car sold. And then they started seeing like their EVs are selling well, but it's not enough to continue the company, right? If they completely pulled the plug, Volvo, any other auto manufacturer that was historically and has established a market based in hybrids and combustion engines, they're likely to fail. So they're building a new thing where they're saying, we're still going to make all of our cars electrified, but we have to continue to sell the hybrid at the same time. So, and that's going to be beyond 2030. So until the American market and European market prove that the people want these electric cars, those hybrid cars are still going to exist.
It only makes sense when you think about it.
It does.
It's risky to completely go to unproven technology.
Exactly.
And we can talk a bit more about the plug-in hybrids in particular.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense. People want that.
They
have been, when you look at the sales of EVs, they have been flat for a little bit.
Yeah.
And plug-in hybrids have been skyrocketing.
Exactly.
It makes sense. So like shorter trips, all battery all the time, and then gas for the longer road trips. But there is a downside.
Yeah.
And that's the fact that you have two systems in one car, making it more expensive.
Yeah. And a lot of points of failure too. Like that's
failure.
That's always a thing.
You still have the negatives of a gas car with all the oil changes, the maintenance. So it's not a perfect solution. Maybe that's counteracted by the high cost of battery still. So by allowing a smaller battery, it offsets it. But until that changes with the investments, which could take some time, I mean, it makes sense.
And it's just a lot of consumers, like, there's like a new move to like mild hybrid, which is like very small battery, just made for like getting the car off the line, stuff like that. But we have a lot of stuff with the with hybrids specifically, like you were saying, they're getting more electrified. If it's not already apparent in this video, I'm a Volvo guy. I know a lot about their stuff, but their current electrified gas cars, their hybrids, are very enticing for people on the edge, and there's a reason for that. It's because the electric motors they put in are very competent. It's not just a standard like electric drivetrain. Like a lot of their electric motors have like 200 horsepower on their own. So the combined is like 450. They're very quick cars. But those electric motors in the last like 2 years, they've been putting bigger batteries. It's not like a whole battery pack, but some of them are between like 80 to 100 miles of range just on the battery. So not enough But it's a thing where if you have a short commute, you can use that car as a full EV. It still has 200 horsepower. It's still plenty, right? That'll get you going where you need to go.
That could be its own little economical EV if they could beat the price down to like 15 grand.
Exactly.
That could be its own product.
Exactly.
But
so
my hunch is the profit margin will be too little at that point.
Yeah, it's and that's the thing because hybrids they're not just expensive for the consumer. They're expensive to build. It's extreme.
Two cars in one.
You have two full drivetrains in one, and like there's a lot going on there, and the cost of goods are high when you have a lot of batteries. We keep going back to that. Price is going down, but it's not down enough. And when you have a battery pack that could push a like 2-ton car 100 miles, that's substantial. Like that's not nothing. That's not like a little like trunk hybrid battery. Like it's nothing compared to like a Cybertruck battery, but it's still more than big enough.
Yeah, the whole EV thing with sales slowing down, it's temporary until prices can come down a little bit. And in the meantime, plug-in hybrids are a very cool product.
They are, yeah.
But that investment, it's just going to help bring down the cost of batteries, and eventually, just economically, it will make sense to ditch the gas components, have it all EV, and people want that. I feel like the performance is better, the acceleration, it's just a better car.
They're nuts, yeah. And like there's a subset of Americans that like love that like engine stuff like that. And when I was younger, I used to be like that, but now I've moved to a thing where like I don't want anyone to notice me ever, right? Like I would like this thought of like a silent car that's like wafts down the road, like that's amazing. And I think more Americans are going to come around to that. Like I still have a combustion engine car. It's mostly because like it's like just a lot to buy an EV right now, as we know. But that will be my next car. Whatever it is, whenever that happens, I'm definitely going electric.
I mean, circling back to China, we can see that when you have the option to buy cheap, a ton of EVs in the market.
People do it. Yeah.
Average people do it.
Yeah. And I think one of the last things I want to focus on that's like not particularly in what we were going to talk about, it's what the implications of like the next election are on this in a very like non-political way.
I think it's very small.
Yeah. I hope it's small, right? Because like I know there's like different plans, and like Biden's administration seemed to have like been really pushing this.
The industrial policy. He was big with that.
So like I hope that whoever continues with that, because
as long as they don't repeal the IRA, which I don't think a president, especially if it's a divided government, that's very unlikely.
No, yeah, because the investments has been too huge, and here's the problem again with America's impatience. A lot of people are calling that a failure, right? They're saying like it's a disaster, it didn't work, we spent so much money, but this is a long-term plan. Like we mentioned before, you can't expect us to go from 0 to 100 in 2 to 4 years' time on something that is fundamentally changing propulsion of vehicles. Like we've been on this gas train for like 100 years now, right? Or more than that even. It takes time. Like internal combustion engines were garbage for the first 20, 30 years. So
you had to crank them, right?
You had to crank them, and like also they were slow as hell, they were inefficient as hell, they never worked, right? Like you're seeing a similar thing with the EVs today. It's like
that's always the adoption curve. It begins expensive and not very good, and then it becomes cheaper and better over time.
Yeah,
that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I mean, people are just like they want everything to work perfectly all the time. It's like that's not the way stuff works. You know?
But long term, things tend to work out, and I think we're on the right track with the government. Because we see China, and they did it 10 years ago, and we're following their path. We have to give up some freedom, right? The government has to spend all this money, but they're investing in the battery technology, the mining in America, the factories. And some tariffs. I think that's only going to be expanding due to the climate.
Exactly.
So it's all the pieces are coming together for in 10 years' time having good an American version of BYD.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's going to happen. And the beautiful thing about the Chinese market is it proves it's possible. It can happen. Before this,
we can look to them for inspiration.
Yeah, exactly. Like if we look back 4 years before like BYD got big, it was completely theoretical. The explosion of EVs was like very. In theory, it sounds great. In theory, they can sell well. But now we see a market, one of the biggest markets in the world, where it is just exploding. I see a world in a few years where 75% of cars sold in China are EV. It might even go literally 100%. I could see
soon,
I see the Chinese government saying like, gas cars, done. Just drop the axe. You know what I think? I think that is what is going to truly push the revolution. Because if you have like, there's still a segment in China, like a more affluent community that doesn't want BYD. They still want their BMW, their Mercedes. If China says gas cars are done, BMW, Mercedes are still going to want that market. Mm-hmm. And that is when they're going to immediately say, okay, all of our flagship has to be electric because we get a lot of money from the Chinese market. And we can't afford to just lose that completely. Yeah. So I really think, unfortunately, it takes like a really stern hand to make a lot of this happen in a timely manner.
But the climate is there, and if we want to look at a Western company as inspiration instead of China, Norway.
Yeah.
Their new car sales are now over 80% electric.
Yeah.
And they've done that. Tesla dominates. I'm not sure how big BYD is there, but if you go to Norway, Tesla's everywhere. And that's a combination of investing in infrastructure, incentivizing. I think you can skip on a bunch of taxes if you buy an EV instead of gas.
Yeah.
And then they have penalties, more taxes for gas cars. And now they're at 80% adoption of EVs. Yeah. And the electricity generation in Norway is almost all hydro.
Yeah.
So it's clean electricity.
Norway's incredible.
Yeah, they're doing everything right in Norway.
Quick side note here, yeah.
So another example to follow of a Western country.
Yeah. And it's just, a lot of it is, what I notice drives people is when you are punished for a certain behavior, that is what makes you change more than being incentivized to do something different. And what I mean by that is like, we see, to quickly side note, and this is some of this like funneling that conversation, when restaurants say like, you get a cheaper price if you use cash and you pay a surcharge if you use your card. That is like the quickest flip of a switch for people to say like, well, I like using my credit card, but at the same time, I'm paying in essence 10% more because it's 5% less for cash and 5% more for the car, right? So once you do that with vehicles, you say you're paying 5% more, you're paying like a 5% fee on a gas car, that's going to make people step away. And another example of that is when you buy like a gas guzzling car, you buy like a sports car, they have that like gas guzzler tax. You could just change that to gas tax. And then immediately people are going to say like, wait a minute, now it's like getting more compelling to buy the EVs because that tax is bringing me closer. I don't know.
Americans hate taxes. So
we
I know a lot of people don't like that. Tell me what to drive.
No, I don't want more taxes. I hate taxes.
So that's why we also have the carrot on the other hand, which is the investment. So that way we can just have better EV options.
Exactly. Here. It's like, definitely my solution is not tax the hell out of Americans. It's bad. Don't want it. But like, that's one of the ways of just sort of like pushing. So it's not like an automatic tax. You could elect to pay higher tax by getting this, or you could elect to pay less by buying the EV.
It's the same thing with the CHIPS Act, investing, because we want to have domestic chips.
Yes,
it's a safe thing. We want to be competitive, not lose the industry. Yeah. And it's the same thing with EVs and why we're investing in them.
And they go hand in hand. When you move EV production to America, there's the amount of semiconductors in electric cars is insane. Even the battery, the amount in there to like do all the battery management, it's a lot.
There's a lot of overlap, but it complements each other. It makes America more of a high-end industry producing place.
And it makes us, I think, just like a stronger global player in that sphere because we could build almost all of it in-house. It's going to make it cheaper for Americans automatically.
It's going to happen 10 years' time.
It's going to. So whoever is in power, please do not stop us from building that here. That's what we need.
Just don't go backwards.
Yeah.
I mean, we will take a few steps back along the way, but America tends to go in the right direction.
And there's going to be pivots. Like, I don't expect us to just like fully go in this chipset direction always, but we need to still focus on the fact that that is what's driving the future. No matter what we're building, chipsets semiconductors are in everything, right? So once we can get something, if we got something on like the TSMC level in America, man.
Well, that's why we have the CHIPS Act and the new factories literally have TSMC in Arizona.
Exactly. But like in Taiwan, they're just like a powerhouse there, right? If we could get to that level, because like Taiwan can continue to provide for most of the Eastern world, but like, can you imagine America providing the Western world?
I mean, we used to, right? Chip was made in
exactly,
America.
Yeah. Silicon Valley, that used to be a thing, right? Now it's just all the billionaires there.
Now it's designed in California.
Yeah, now it's designed, exactly. But I see that being a thing again. Like,
we're on the right path.
Yeah, American manufacturing doesn't fundamentally have to be the most expensive. If you put the proper controls in place, if you optimize the production, even with higher salaries, you could still make a very compelling product that works. And I really think it would explode our economy even more than we already have.
It's a big high value added industry, which is the kind of thing that advanced economies can do. So economically it works out.
And like, think about like, it's like high risk, high reward, just like any investment, right? Like the amount of money that has to be put into semiconductor production is probably more than anything the government has ever done to do it right.
Fabs are billions of dollars for one.
Yeah, exactly. But if that works and now all of our like NATO partners and other people start buying our chipsets, that is an incredible source of income.
That's how you grow your GDP over time.
Exactly.
You have to have that foresight. And luckily, having an enemy China,
Yeah.
really stimulates America.
It does. It does.
When we look at Russia, Soviet Union, that America really needs an enemy. And that's what we have now.
That's anything. Like anything in just like consumer goods. If like Apple was the only one on planet Earth building computers and phones, why innovate? Right? But now you have like amazing like things in China that like they're a company in China, they're making really good products. You have in like South Korea, for example, like with Samsung, they're a major player. Like those two need to coexist.
We didn't talk about Kia in this video. We could have though. Kia has other really cool lineup, like vans and all this stuff with electric.
And we're seeing them quickly. And the other one, now that we're talking about South Korea, let's pivot quickly. Hyundai. Their electric cars are exploding. I don't know if you see like the Ioniq 5. Those are very cool looking. They're selling really well. The build quality is pretty good. Hyundai's come a long way in like the last
Hyundai
like 15
and Kia,
years.
they're sister companies, right?
Yeah, so like
they're very similar.
Yeah, so they're very similar. So Hyundai is the parent company, and like Hyundai's the main car, and then their cheaper lineup is Kia. So again, makes sense. And then their premium line is Genesis. So, but they're sort of slowly electrifying all of it. So you're gonna have the premium segment, the mid-market segment, and the emerging market segment. That's how you do it. Like cover the whole sphere. Like we don't need to just do the best or just do the worst. Like once you can vertically integrate into the whole market, that's when that's when you succeed. And I think those cars are even selling well in South Korea. It's a more affluent market, so Genesis is taking over more, but just because people have more money, right? But that's another, I think, future EV powerhouse is going to be South Korea.
And we can actually buy from them.
Exactly.
We do.
Exactly.
So that can help kind of a nice Band-Aid solution as well until we produce better EVs.
And another quick side note, Japan. Once like Toyota and Honda start really electrifying, like I'm
surprised they're behind. I mean, okay, Toyota with the Prius for a long time.
Yeah, for a long time.
Ahead with that.
Yeah, I think it's like the Japanese mentality as a whole. They're much more reserved, but like when you look at the Toyota Camry, I think for the past 25 years still in America, it's the best-selling car every year. Even more than like the F-150. It's crazy.
F-150 I think is the number one selling car in America. Unfortunately, it's the F-150.
Let me see.
I mean, I'm not proud to say that, but
let me see. Because I'm telling you,
the best-selling car, new car at
number
least.
one.
I think the second, like the Silverado. It's ugly. Don't look at that list.
It is the F-150. Wait, what was? I saw something. They said like the Camry was like really high.
I mean, it's maybe the best sedan.
Yeah, but
something like that.
I feel like it was more than that. You're right. You are correct. Thank you for checking me there. But like, I just know.
I wish I wasn't correct.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, it's not a bad thing that an American car is really well selling in America. But the thing is, the Camry, nonetheless, is a very good selling car. If they electrify that and make it cheaper,
I'm shocked they still haven't done that.
I really think that in the next 2 generations is happening. I think
just have an EV version and gas version, same price.
Oh no, that's the big thing. That's the big thing. They're not going to just kill the gas car. I think Toyota's going to go to 2040. I'm not even kidding. Specifically Toyota.
The safe, like I said, Japanese culture, safely pivoting.
It's a safe pivot
for both until you can go.
You slowly ramp up the EV, and then like once like the EV is like, I think until they sell like 90% EV, they're not killing the combustion engine.
I have seen a lot of news that Toyota in particular is focusing on the development of solid-state batteries.
Yeah.
So maybe they're waiting for a big battery breakthrough. Because as we talked about, there is that negative feedback loop of bigger batteries add weight, reduce range, so you need bigger batteries. So they could be waiting for that change, and with all those investments, that's only going to be speeding that up. So maybe that's what we need—a big breakthrough in battery technology before then it really makes sense economically.
Like, that is the only problem in my view with EVs. The drivetrain is fantastic. Everything about it is so streamlined, much more simple. There's less moving parts, less things to break, but batteries still suck.
They do.
Like lithium-ion batteries are not good. They're period.
They're getting better. The cost is coming down. The energy density is slowly increasing.
Energy density is going up.
But we need that breakthrough.
But like the core technology is still old and a little flawed, right? They degrade quickly.
Let's just say in 50 years' time, I'll be shocked.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If we still use lithium ion.
It can't happen. Like look at even just like on a smaller scale, our cell phones. Like our batteries degrade rapidly. After 2 years, they're like not nearly as good. It's less of a problem with massive car batteries because they could like do
the charge cycles.
Yeah, the charge cycles are better. They do much better battery management if you're not like constantly using the whole amount. They're like, okay, we'll like put this section of batteries in a dormant state to like preserve it.
Yeah,
but
they can do some tricks.
There's tricks they could do to get the most out of it. Like that's like taking garbage technology and using tech to make it better. But once we get the core thing, like the energy itself in batteries, if it's whatever the next breakthrough.
I mean, we do have lithium iron phosphate batteries, which
Yes.
are a lot better, longer life cycle, safer too. They don't catch fire.
Exactly.
Although that whole thing of like EVs catching fire, gas cars explode
all the
at
time.
a higher rate.
All the time.
So
again, it's like it's.
But it's a new technology, so people are always afraid of it.
Yeah, people are afraid of it. I always go to people saying like, every once in like 7 months, someone dies because of self-driving. And in that same 7 months, 40,000 people have died because of distracted drivers, right? So it's like, yes, it's scary, but like, how about we like put it in perspective, right? Like that's the key.
It'll be a big improvement. Self-driving will save lives.
Yeah.
And EVs will be better for the environment.
They will be, yeah.
As we invest more in the mining and everything the proper way, which I think is only a matter of time.
So I think the sum and all of this is that we're going to get there. It's just not going to happen at the speed that a lot of policymakers and people who are tech forward like us hoped, right?
But we do see China, and we don't like to say we're copying China, but we see that investing in the industry, protecting domestic industry, it's a winning formula, and we're doing that here. It's already started.
It is. So I think we're in good shape. But with that, I think that was a good topic.
I think that was a good conversation.
I think it was a good conversation. I think we have a lot of good stuff. I definitely want to revisit this in the future as things change. So this is changing rapidly, and there's a lot of like sister topics that we can make off of this. Like this is a very complicated industry. We were speaking super high level. So with that,
it's been clean.
Good. It's been clean. Episode 2, and let's see what we got next.
Boom.
All right.
Good combo.
Yeah. No, that's good.